Every American in every home that wants to use water and electricity is affected.
Call those people up that run the internet and get them to do something.
Government and the private sector are grappling with these major cybersecurity issues.
What should we do? What should the private sector do? What should government do?
The purpose of today's event is for us to imagine a new world where cyber threats are replacing other threats, and we need to come up with a way of government and the private sector to work together, because this is a realm where it's only through public-private partnerships that we can take on what's going to be the defining threat of our times.
In the history of cyber conflict, we see the private sector tends to have agility, subject matter knowledge, and their hands are deep in cyberspace. The government has resources, staying power, and additional levers of power.
How does the White House bring in the private sector, which it would have to in this kind of situation? And how do you deal with a threat that would deal with every American's life?
This is a problem that affects us all.
Whatever kinds of issues can affect a large bank or large energy company can affect an individual and their household.
This isn't like the nuclear threat, really, where it was really government and government. The most critical infrastructure that we have to protect isn't government at all. So how does government work with the private sector to take this on?
Where government has a role is in bringing the relevant private sector components together with the relevant public sector components.
A lot of times that's not what government wants. They want to be the ones in charge, and they want to be the ones with their hands on the stick.
There are a lot of challenges. The government doesn't have all the answers, the private sector doesn't have all the answers either, and it's only by working together and leveraging the authorities we have in the government, the visibility and the capability we have in the private sector, that we can actually make an impact on this problem.
We have identified key infrastructure that has been used by the adversaries, that is located in different parts of the world. We cannot necessarily affect that infrastructure because we have just been told by the FBI, quite frankly, that we will be prosecuted if we attempt to take it down. But when we ask the government to take action through Cyber Command or other measures, they refuse to do so.
What can the government do to get out of your way and let you engage in self-help?
Well, one thing it can do is not threaten me as a victim when I attempt to take care of the problem.
I think the important thing to remember about the internet is that it's built and operated by the private sector. And so when there are problems like this, it's the private sector that is in a position to actually solve them.
It would be a very interesting environment under which the government decided that it was going to step back and actually allow private companies to attack.
We're not having a debate about whether private sector should or should not act. The private sector is already acting.
There's a subset of industry that advocates active response, but I think the rest of the private sector is not interested in committing crimes in response to crimes.
So just to clarify, the private sector, the security industry specifically, is not asking for permission to counterattack the bad guy. What they're asking for is authorities to mitigate the damage, take the ability to shut down only the attack capability, or gain ability to listen in so that I can defend myself better. So we're not asking to go vigilante.
The private sector, we say, you don't have the authorities to shoot back, so you better not do it. The DoD has the authorities to shoot back.
We have to actually change our way of thinking. Cyber is everywhere. It's in the movies you watch, it's in the electricity you use, it's in the water you drink. It's all pervasive, and it's part of how we run our societies.
The government can only do that which it's authorized, at least in the West. Private sector can do all those things except those that are forbidden.
This situation brings up a very interesting illustration of what the public sector knows versus what the private sector knows.
Which is more important, that the government of Kiribati know about this or that Wells Fargo know about this? Vastly more people are going to be affected by Wells Fargo's response than by the government of Kiribati's response.
This isn't just a private problem, it's a blended private-public problem. And it requires a blended response.
New York, as an example of the American financial services sector, is the global financial sector. You think about it really carefully, large amounts of that money you're talking about is not US-owned money. An attack on that sector is an attack on the global financial system, and there's a lot of allies and lots of adversaries who will come together on that issue because it is their cash. But if the financial sector is seen to be vulnerable, the long-term implications on US leadership and the US economy, I think, is very, very significant.
That's why Americans have to worry, because this is going to touch each and every one of them. This is not some sort of abstract issue that only affects people on some military battleground in some far-off place. This is a battle that will come to your living room. This is a battle that's going to affect your water supply. This is a battle that will affect whether you can turn on your electricity. This is something that has to affect each and every American, and frankly, everyone in the world.